Welcome into THV 11's special edition of Election Central. Thank you for joining us. I'm Craig O'Neill.
And I'm Faith Woodard. We are joined tonight by Lance Turner, editor at Arkansas Business. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me yet again.
What a great night this is going to be. But that's not all. We got Rolly Hoy in studio, joined by election analyst Charles King from Philander Smith College. Rolly.
Craig, that's indeed true. We have Charles, a gentleman who has been steeped in Arkansas politics for many years. Looking forward to hearing how these races unfold as we get these results. So what are you looking forward to or focusing most on tonight?
I'm focusing tonight on just, first of all, how many people actually turn out, because Arkansas nationally has one of the lowest voter turnouts overall. So that's number one. And then there are a few races that we want to look at as well.
There could be some bellwethers here in the state as well as we get the coverage in from CBS at the same time as these national races unfold. So a long and hopefully fun night ahead of us.
Yes.
All right, Lance. We're going to bring you in here and picking your brain throughout the night. Let's first of all, though, join and meet our team of talented journalists who are joining us.
Yeah, we have reporters at both Sarah Huckabee Sanders and Chris Jones's watch party, and we are keeping an eye on the Little Rock mayor's race with reporters live with both incumbent Frank Scott Jr. and Steve Landers.
All right, let's start with THV 11 Sarah Huckabee Sanders watch parties. All right. Share the atmosphere with us, Sarah.
Rolly, just a few seconds ago, there was a lot of commotion starting here. There's some network news playing behind us. And as that rolls through to cover the Arkansas race, people here get excited. The campaign staff have been confident all night. They say that Sarah Huckabee Sanders herself won't be coming out until her victory speech later on tonight. Again, the polls just closed moments ago. This has been a long campaign trail that could all end tonight. Sarah Huckabee Sanders started her campaign back in June. So we now have learned that they have just called the race. Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be the next governor for Arkansas. This breaks a lot of records tonight. She will be the first woman to lead the state. She will also be the first mother to lead the state. I know that was an important factor for voters. So people here are very excited. Again, the reaction didn't seem surprised here at all. They've been confident all night. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is expected to come out on this stage to make a victory speech later on. She was expected to be in the building right around now. Again, polls just closed a few minutes ago, so this is all happening very quickly. Now, her competitor, Chris Jones, was having a party of his own. Frederick, what's going on there moments after this race call?
Yes, Sarah. Well, people just started piling into the William Grant Still Ballroom here at the Robinson Center. Chris Jones himself is not here. He said that he would not be here until after polls close. So I don't think the word is out. There hasn't really been any reaction about that race as of right now. But of course, he was pretty optimistic that he would be able to win against his opponent, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I mean, he had been campaigning in all of 75 counties here in Arkansas at least 3 times. He even made stops in Hope, Prescott, his hometown of Pine Bluff, and Little Rock today, trying to secure those last-minute votes. About a couple hours ago, he visited the Dunbar Community Center here in Little Rock and then went southwest to a church on Geyer Spring Roads. He's rallying and trying to get those voters. But again, there isn't really any reaction here in the ballroom as Chris Jones is making his way here. There are also some other candidates here. Natalie Jones, who's running for the U.S. Senate spot. Kelly Kraut, who's running to be Arkansas's next attorney governor. And Jesse Gibson, who's running to be Arkansas's next attorney general. He's expected, they're all going to be here today watching Chris Jones' watch party and watching those results as well as their own respective results. So we're going to be here all throughout the night, and hopefully the next time we'll come, Chris Jones will be here and maybe we could get some reaction from him. But again, we're live tonight at the Robinson Center. I'm Frederick Price. I'll send things back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Frederick. Boy, that didn't take long.
I know. I mean, but are we shocked, though, is the question.
Not shocked, but it didn't take very long.
I mean, 7:32, I was looking, and I mean, that's 2 minutes later.
Pretty quick call, and I think reflective of just sort of the way this race has gone. I mean, ever since she declared, even before she declared, she was considered to be the front runner in this race, and now makes history. First woman governor of Arkansas, the first child of a previous governor to become governor, and also the first back-to-back GOP governor we've had since Reconstruction.
You know, we talked about this. There was a chance, I mean, either way, a glass ceiling was going to be broken. First black African-American governor, first woman governor, and we've gotten the answer here early.
Yeah, not a shocker, but I mean, she's been setting this up for a while now. I mean, she's had her foot really in politics for a while now, not just with her father, but on other campaigns as well. I mean, we know that she's been with President Donald Trump, and we know that she's been with Bozeman and Cotton. Can you tell us a little bit about how she's kind of been gearing up?
Well, I mean, she's been raised obviously in politics, the daughter of Governor Mike Huckabee, and then as soon as she could, she was working on campaigns, campaign manager for John Bozeman's first campaign, worked on Tom Cotton's successful campaign, and then of course, right to the White House to be press secretary for Donald Trump for a couple years, and that really helped. I mean, Arkansas is a deeply red state, and we're going to see this underscored over and over again tonight. Just how red Arkansas is and how popular Trump is here, and so her affiliation with him obviously helps. Her fundraising has been incredible from the get-go, and we saw early. Remember, Leslie Rutledge was going to run for governor. Tim Griffin was going to run. Actually, I'm getting my races confused, but Leslie Rutledge was going to run for governor and dropped out just because the fundraising advantage was just so incredible. And so really it has been just kind of a juggernaut from the beginning.
I'm going to go, and even though our producer doesn't know this, I want to go over to Rowley and Charles, because Charles, you and I had a conversation about percentages. That even though we've called it already so early, we still want to see these percentages, don't we?
I agree.
Yeah. Let's go over to Charles and Rowley. I'm asking Charles a question. We still want to see these percentages before this evening is over.
I think we both agree that's something we do want to see, even though it's showing zeros right now. I think the dynamic in this is that all of the pieces and cards were on the table to show how this is going to turn out. But these margins are important.
Margins are very important. I think while it was a foregone conclusion that Sarah Huckabee was the predestined winner before we even cast the first vote by a lot of people, I think two things are important. One, the margin of her win. If she doesn't get, in my opinion, 55% or more, she actually loses. And what I mean by that is that she has national interest in her mind. She wants to be on the national ticket. We all know that. They won't admit it. But if she doesn't get 55% from a good but untested candidate like Chris Jones, who I think was a very good candidate, then that's going to send a strong signal to the national people.
And this isn't the first very early call that we've seen in some of these national races already. The Florida governor and Florida senator's race, Ron DeSantis, who's being put out as a considerable potential rival to Donald Trump, depending on what that announcement is here in the next couple of weeks. Those races called within minutes after polls closed in Florida. So I think this is more a move of what we're seeing from the Associated Press to not wait around like we did when there were way more absentee ballots out there in 2020. So we will still have reasons to see these returns come in and see how she stacks up in terms of her strength in this particular election.
Absolutely.
Suspense. That's what we want. We want some suspense on this show, because if we're going to take you through the night, we got to have suspense. We may get some in the mayoral race.
Yes. All right. Well, now we're going to head over to Ian, who has a little bit on Frank Scott Jr. And Ian, what can you tell us about this race?
Yeah, well, this one is not being called near as quickly as the governor's race, but obviously a lot of excitement still concerning this one. People have started to pour into the hall here on 9th Street in Little Rock. More and more people have started coming. I'm honestly kind of wondering if y'all can hear me with how loud this is with the music out here. The music, of course, meant to pump up crowd goers as they get ready to welcome in Frank Scott Jr., of course, if he is reelected here. Now, those people out here in the crowd are obviously on Frank's side, and they're on board with what he's accomplished so far and his vision of growth for the rest of his time if he is reelected. Of course, when we spoke earlier this morning, he touted a couple things. He touted some job growth. He said we were the only other city in the South to continue to grow alongside Huntsville, Alabama. He said we're the only two cities in the South to grow like that. He also spoke very highly just what they've been able to accomplish. Of course, there are some on the other side, of course, in the Steve Landers campaign who have pushed some issues they have with Frank Scott and how he has ran his time as mayor so far. I want to send things out to Ashley Godwin out of Steve Landers' watch party. Ashley, have you heard some of those things so far from supporters?
Hey, Ian, we
just got some voting results. These are only early votes from Pulaski County, so let me break this down. I'm still looking over the numbers, but as of now for early votes, Landers has 38% of the votes, Frank Scott Jr. has 50%, Glenn Schwartz has 1%, and Greg Henderson has 7% of the votes. Now, again, these are early votes, so we still have a long way to go in this process. I am at the Steve Landers campaign. The party has started. There's music, people are laughing and eating, and Steve Landers has been walking around hugging people and meeting them. So we have a long way to go in this tonight. But again, Landers 38% of the vote and Frank Scott Jr. 50% of the vote in this early vote for this election. Back to you.
All right, Ashley, thank you. Well, Mayor Scott and Landers aren't just facing off against each other. Greg Henderson and Glenn Schwartz also in the running, though Scott and Landers are considered the front runners in this race.
Schwartz has the best. Mayor Schwartz, be with you.
There you go. There you go.
He's got the best sign, you got to admit.
He's got a good sign, yeah.
All right, those are a few of the big races. Now we want to turn to the issues voters saw on their ballots. Lance, one that has people weighing in on both sides of the issue, the push to legalize recreational marijuana here in Arkansas. And TGP 11's Jalissa Garza has been following this race closely, joins us live from the Capitol Hotel, and that's where we find the supporters of this issue. Jalissa, what's up there?
Responsible Growth Arkansas started setting up around 3 o'clock, and just about 30 minutes ago, more supporters have started trickling in. Everyone feeling a little bit confident and really just hoping that Arkansans vote for this issue. Back in 2016, we did see about 50% of Arkansans vote to legalize medical marijuana. Now, people like Alex Gray hoping they do the same for recreational. We've talked about a lot of different things when it comes to this issue. One of the biggest things that Responsible Growth Arkansas says is this is good for economic development. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, so this amendment provides 80 new retail outlets. It also provides 52 new licenses. And so, you know, it increases competition, it expands opportunities. I think there's a projected, you know, $200 million plus in tax revenue over the next 5 years. So, you know, 1,500 to 3,000 new jobs. So it's going to be a real good economic, driver for the state.
Now that the polls have closed, how are you feeling? I know that you've made it clear to me you believe this is going to be a tight race.
It's going to be tight. I mean, we don't really have any, meaningful data in yet. So I think everybody's just kind of, sitting and waiting. And I anticipate this will be, we will go, pretty late into the night.
Thank you so much. And I've also been speaking with those who are against this issue passing. Many different organizations all saying the same thing. They just don't believe that this is good for Arkansans, saying that the amendment is flawed. We've also seen medical marijuana supporters oppose issue 4 after voting for it to pass in 2016. So again, a lot of mixed reviews when it comes to how voters feel on this issue. We even saw a decline recently compared to the support we saw in September. So really, there's going to be a lot of eyes on this. People in this room also paying close attention to issue 2 and how that could impact this issue and if it passes tonight. So a lot of people feeling good in this room, but people on the other side also feeling good. So we'll see what happens. Back to you guys in the studio.
Hey, there might be some suspense here.
Yeah.
There could be. And this is one that I think recreational marijuana is growing in popularity across the country. I think when people think about that sort of in a vacuum, it enjoys some popularity. And I think we saw that in early polls this year. But I think when people started to really engage with this particular ballot title, this particular idea, that's when opposition to it has grown. And so that's kind of what they're up against tonight, is that in the final weeks of this campaign, it started to shift, and the opposition started to grow to it, and so I still think this could be a really close one. But I personally think it could probably be a narrow defeat for this, just given the trend that we've seen. But anything's possible, of course, and it could be a close one.
Ooh.
All these issues, I think, could be pretty close.
Building the suspense now, and
trying to help you out here.
Well, good. How much of this is a constitutional issue?
in terms of, do we need to go ahead and do this before the bar is raised?
It says here on the notes I made, amends the Constitution to legalize use of marijuana by adults aged 21 and older and imposes a 10% sales tax on marijuana sales.
I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with just how this sort of go ahead and grants the existing medical marijuana industry a ground floor access to multi-millions of dollars of a new market. And I think some folks are uncomfortable with that. And there's other parts of this as well that people have expressed concerns with.
Now, we also want to pull in Rolly and Charles just to give a little insight there. Guys, what are you thinking in terms of issue 4?
Well, in terms of how close this is going to be, we've got the first look at these numbers that have come in from Pulaski County. We were expecting them to provide their early vote totals and give us our first chance to really see. And there's only maybe 250 votes difference between for and against issue 4 at this point.
Of course, it's really tight right now, but that depends on what part of the city, or part of the county that those results have come from. I think that in the last few days, there was a tremendous surge downward for support. But if you look at late night TV, like I'm a big late night TV fan, every 2 minutes, it was one or the other. So the people have a lot to decide. And finally, when I went to vote today, issue 4 took up nearly 2/3 of the page as compared to the other issues. So there's a lot to explain that may make people think, it's too much to read, I'm just going to vote against it.
That's a one way to definitely think of it. It's been on everybody's mind for so many months with so much money spent on this campaign. And like I say, if this is indicative of how data is going to come in throughout the night, we're going to have really thin margins for this issue as we go along.
It's going to be interesting.
All right, well, we also will hear from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, we're told, in about 30 minutes.
Set your watch, y'all.
You definitely want to tune in and you don't want to miss it. But just getting back to some of those issues, issue 4 is not the only issue, that people want to discuss and they can vote on. I mean, we have issue 2, we have issue 3. And I mean, can you talk a little bit about that?
And 2 and 4 are intertwined.
That's right, yeah. So issue 2 is the one where it actually raises the bar for the vote that you need to pass a constitutional amendment here in Arkansas. From simple majority, 50+1, to 60%. And so a lot of recreational marijuana proponents are thinking, look, it's now or never for us, because it may not be that we can muster 60% of Arkansans to vote for recreational marijuana, but we can certainly get 50+1 today. And so that's the tension there is, do people go ahead, even though they may have misgivings about this particular bill or this particular proposal, do they kind of say, you know what, we've got to do it now, because if issue 2 passes, that's a super high bar for us to try to reach in 2024.
David Ray of Maumelle was the one who sponsored this.
That's right.
And of Central Arkansas. So that's where the push to get this, get the point where you have to get to the 60%. Now, this brings up an interesting conundrum.
Yes.
And it's interesting to think about the things that did not pass with 60% of the vote. The things that we have passed over the years that did not hit that 60% threshold. In 12 of 20 proposals in the last 20 years, most of those would not have reached the 60% threshold. And so when you think about all the things that are important to you, or the things that we've passed in the past, you can go back and look. Very few of them have hit that 60% mark. And so there's an effort. There's the idea that the Constitution's important. We shouldn't be able to amend it willy-nilly. And so let's make it special. Let's make it a little higher bar to do that. And so that's where that idea has come from.
Got to believe that David Ray, currently of District 40 of Maumelle, looked at that and realized he had a chance to change things.
Yes.
So they may be changing tonight.
And guys, a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss, but we do have some numbers from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and we do want to send it off to Sarah Huckabee, who is live and can give us some more information on Sarah Huckabee Sanders' big win.
That's right, Faith. It was an early call here tonight. I spoke with staff from the campaign. So they said they were hoping for an early call, and really it couldn't get any better for them than this. We do have some new numbers about those numbers coming in. About 75% of those voting came in for Sarah Huckabee Sanders, with just about 25% for Chris Jones, So really it was a quick night here. It's a very full room. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is expected to speak and make that victory speech in just under a half hour now, so we will definitely be bringing that to you. But again, this happened just minutes after the polls closed, with 0% reporting. Just a decimal point of places reporting called this race. So clearly a strong support here for Sarah Huckabee Sanders to be that first female governor of Arkansas. We'll continue to have more here and give you the latest of her platform, and of course sharing her speech as the first speech when she is now going to be the governor of Arkansas coming up. For now, reporting, Sarah Huckabee, THV 11 News.
Well, we have yet to see the Central Arkansas vote,
Right.
which could tighten that race, but there's a reason why that race was called so early, and you just saw why.
Yeah, 75%. I mean, that's a lot. And one thing I'm wondering, obviously, this is a monumental, night for her. But one thing I'm wondering is, could we see Chris Jones possibly sticking around and, kind of participating and being included with Sarah Huckabee Sanders' camp in her office, or what's next for him?
Well, I'm not sure that would be a thing that would happen, but I do think that he probably, I think the party would love for him to stick around and be a part of the Democratic Party in the future. And a lot of that will depend on what his margin, what amount of vote does he pull tonight. And so we'll be watching that number as it comes along and see kind of how he stacks up against previous Democratic challengers in governor's races. And if he's doing good numbers, then there's a good chance that they're going to look at him for other things in the future.
And we've all been impressed with his campaign techniques and the message that he's
That's
had.
right. Yeah.
He's attempted to lower the temperature, to bring in education in Arkansas, and I think Sarah Huckabee Sanders responded to that in a lot of ways. So in a lot of ways, he took the leadership in bringing up these issues. And Charles, again, we're going to go over to you and Rowley about the possibility that that Chris Jones could stick around and maybe help Sarah Huckabee Sanders in a consultancy.
He's been such a dynamic candidate so far, despite this very uphill climb that he faced. We're looking at some of the numbers coming in. The early vote, remember they were able to tabulate early votes in Pulaski County this morning. And Chris Jones beat Sarah Sanders in Pulaski County by a 2-to-1 margin, 63% to 34%. Which does give you an indication of just how strong she's expected to be in the rest of the state. But 65%, 64% in Pulaski County stacks up really well against, say, a candidate like a French Hill or something like that.
When you talk about him getting 64% in Central Arkansas, it does a couple of things. One, it says, yes, Chris Jones has a future in the Democratic Party, if not in this actual governor's race, and the party would be smart to gather behind him, depending on, as Lance said earlier, just how many people do turn out to vote overall and what his numbers are. But Chris Jones has established himself as a good candidate. He ran a great race. He talked the issues. He's smart. He's intelligent. I think he has a long future.
And if you look at his French Hill, Congressman French Hill, the representative for Central Arkansas. Right now, the early vote totals out of Pulaski County have him with 41%. Contessa Hathaway, who has almost no name recognition outside of Little Rock and Central Arkansas, coming in with 52%. So a good, strong showing by Jones and indications that his future could lie here in Central Arkansas as he goes into future elections.
All right, Rowley. Hey, when results come in, we're going to have all of those posted online at thv11.com. And if you want that link sent to you, just text the word vote to 501-376-1111. I hope your fingers aren't as erratic as mine.
Yeah, when those results come in, we'll have all of those posted online at thv11.com. And if you want that link sent to you, just text the word vote, like we just said, because we have a lot of results coming in and we do want to keep you guys updated.
There you go. All right, here's what's going to happen tonight. We're going to break for a quick little cut-in.
Right.
But there's not going to be any change. We're still going to be here. We're going to be talking. You're not going to be excluded. It's not like we're going to suddenly turn it off and you're not going to be able to watch. So we're going to go to a cut-in on our broadcast channel. Stay with us, And we're just going to keep talking all night and analyzing this. And by golly, there is going to be some suspense.
Yes.
Even if I have to
Even if you have
manufacture
to make it up. That's right. Yep.
We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Well, good evening and welcome to THV 11's Election Central, where we are following all of the results from the major races you had the chance to weigh in today. And for the last 2 weeks, I'm Faith Woodard.
And I'm Craig O'Neill. And from the candidates to the issues, we got you covered. Right now, we want to check in with what was probably the biggest race we were watching. The contest to be Arkansas's next governor. THV 11's Frederick Price spent the day following Chris Jones, now the unsuccessful candidate. We're going to hear from him in a moment, but let's check in first with Sarah Huckabee, who has more on the next governor of Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Yeah, Craig, just minutes after polls closed here in Arkansas, Sarah Huckabee Sanders was named to be the next governor of the natural state. The music has been getting louder in here. People have been called to enter the ballroom as Sarah Huckabee Sanders is expected to speak in just under a half hour now. So definitely a lot of excitement in this room. Now looking towards what policies she values. She's been talking all day about education, about economy. Now those were two points that Chris Jones, her Democratic candidate, also focused on now in his unsuccessful race. THV 11's Frederick Price is there. Frederick, what is that situation like?
Yeah, Sarah, there are a lot of Chris Jones supporters here at the William Grant Still Ballroom at the Robinson Center in Little Rock. But among those people that are not here, Chris Jones himself, he's still about 15 minutes away. That's what his campaign team told me. And when he gets here, I'm sure we're going to hear reaction from him about this race and if he's even going to still stay into politics. But some of the things that he talked about, he went and tried to get some of those supporters. He went to Hope, he went to Prescott, his hometown of Pine Bluff, and even Little Rock today, trying to secure those last-minute voters. But it obviously was a quick turnaround. The Arkansas voters have spoken. We're going to have a lot more coming up throughout our election coverage tonight, and hopefully we'll get reaction from Chris Jones himself as well. For now, though, we're live in Little Rock. We'll send things back to you.
All right, so we had a quick call on the governor's race, but how about Little Rock mayor? Here's what we're showing so far. No results to report, Faye.
Yeah, and we'll be following this all night. As we know, Frank Scott Jr. and Steve Landers, some of the leading contenders in that race, so we'll definitely want to be following that. But issue 4 is also something that we want to talk about, and we want to check in with the push to legalize recreational marijuana. And so far, there's 66% and 33%. So 33% say yes, 66% say no. So we'll definitely want to check back in just a few moments just to follow that race, and obviously a lot of other issues on the ballot as well.
And we have the latest results right now at thv11.com. If you want that link sent to you, just text the word VOTE to 501-376-1111.
And you can join us right after this on our streaming app on Roku and Amazon Fire devices, as well as thv11.com and on the THV11 YouTube page. That is where we keep you up to date on all the races and issues throughout the night. We'll be right back.
welcome back to CSV 11 Election Central. We admire your taste in the way you choose election coverage. I think you're proving that you're one of the smartest people on the face of the earth just for watching us now.
I agree. I agree. But we have a lot to unpack here tonight. Obviously, we already have some big news coming in.
We
Sarah,
unpack the governor's race, that's for sure.
Pretty quickly.
That didn't
Sarah
take long.
Huckabee Sanders will be the next governor here in Arkansas, something that, I mean, is no shocker to many of us here tonight.
That's right. Yeah, and I think next steps will be interesting. Now we'll begin the game of putting together the administration, putting together the legislative agenda. Remember, we've got a general session coming right around the corner, starting in January, and so all of that stuff will start to get underway, and the transition will be happening. And so that'll be the fun thing to watch. Is who leads the agencies, who gets put in the leadership, who gets put into the governor's office. All those kinds of things will start happening. But frankly, there's a plan probably already pretty well set at this point for that to start happening. But those are the next steps that we'll be following over the next several weeks.
Well, we saw Sarah Huckabee Sanders run those press conferences for President Trump, and she was combative. And I have to wonder if she will mellow and move more toward the center as the governor of the state of Arkansas. And I would love to hear what Rowley and Charles King have to say to that thought. Gentlemen?
Well, it is a very good question.
Yep.
We're going to...
Oh, okay.
Craig, you go ahead and explain the vote.
There I am.
To issue 4. Now it's us. Here we go. Doing this on the fly. We, Charles King with me, Rolly Hoyt, and we're glad indeed that you have joined us for election coverage. We will touch on this. We were just talking about it as well, about what is ahead for Sarah Sanders. And I frankly don't think, based on who her mentors are, her father and the former president, that she might mellow. We shall see.
It's not going to be as easy as some may think, because those players who were in power when her father was governor, we've got a whole new set of leaders. Our committee chairs, especially those important committee chairs, are young, they're aggressive. They challenged the current governor, and he is pretty popular in his state. So her being not one to grow up in their game, she's got to listen for a minute, I think.
To speak to that, there's several. This is going to be one of the first times in many, many years, you know better than me, that there won't be a member of the Hutchison family in key positions in Arkansas government, either here in Little Rock or up in Washington. So, but with that in mind, the issues before voters today, one of the most popular and debated ones was issue number 4. We've had Jalissa Garza out covering how that campaign has been unfolding. And guys, what's the latest that we have on that right now?
We have a woman that would know.
Yeah, we are going to go to Jalissa Garza. We'll talk about that in just a few moments. We got some initial results, but Jalissa, can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect with issue 4? And you're there and with some of the supporters. Can you tell us what the vibe is like kind of at the Capitol Hotel?
They're all at the buffet.
Well, right before you guys checked in, we could see a different range of emotions. You can hear a little bit of excitement, a little bit of concern to overall everyone watching those numbers really closely. And in the end, they knew here, Responsible Growth Arkansas knew that this was going to be a tight race. Yesterday at the Capitol, when the opposing side of this issue and the people who were for this issue met, making their last case to voters, they were aware that what was going to happen today was going to be very, very close. In the end, both sides tell me it's up to Arkansans. And of course, each side is hoping that people vote in their favor. Now, if this issue does pass tonight, Arkansas will be the 20th state in the country to legalize recreational marijuana. And this is one of 5 states with this on the ballot right now. So a lot at stake. I will tell you, Alex Gray, who we spoke with earlier, they have a laptop over there in the corner and they are watching the numbers very, very closely. If you take a look, making phone calls, just trying to see what's going to happen. So the energy really just shifting in different directions, but more supporters piling in. And again, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens at the poll, but we do know that this has proven to be a very hot topic among voters. We've seen people who support medical marijuana not supporting issue 4, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but all eyes are definitely on issue 4 in this room.
In this room now, I keep tearing up this desk. In this room now, all eyes are on, I started to say all eyes are on the mayoral race.
And they are.
There is issue 2 we need to address.
That's right.
So, because that's been voted on too. Do we have some results on issue 2?
Issue 2 trending toward a no right now, which I think that was one that I thought could narrowly be rejected tonight. We'll still have to see. We've only got 1% of precincts reporting, so still a ton of the vote to come in. But this again is the one that raises the bar for passing constitutional amendments here in Arkansas from a simple majority to 60%. Again, making it harder to pass those constitutional amendments like, let's remember, casinos, the state lottery.
Right.
Medical marijuana, highway projects. There's been all manner of things. The minimum wage. So this would make that just that much harder to get those constitutional amendments passed in Arkansas. And the people who are for it think that obviously the Constitution is special and shouldn't be so easy to amend. But others feel like majority rule, and this has worked for a long time, and why mess with a good thing?
All right, well, a lot to unpack here tonight, but all eyes are on the mayoral race as well, and we want to head over to Ian Russell, who's been following this race all night. Ashley got one as well. So, Ian, is there anything that you can tell us about this race? Obviously, it might be a close one. We'll follow those numbers, but we're going to send things over to Ian. Ian, what can you tell us?
Yeah, guys, well, I can tell you that just a second ago, officials from Frank Scott's campaign came up on stage and they said, with those early voting numbers, again, those are unofficial as they still count them, but with those early voting numbers, Mayor Frank Scott Jr. is still in the lead with about 50% of the vote here in Pulaski County. So, of course, a lot of cheering, a lot of applause here when they announced that, and there's been a lot of that kind of throughout the night. Crowds are still coming in here, but I've seen a lot of people kind of out and about, socializing, talking to people, taking pictures, dancing, laughing, as, of course, people here are very, very confident that Frank Scott Jr. is going to be their mayor for the next 4 years. Of course, we have to wait for those poll results to come in. Polls have been closed now for a little over half an hour. We have to wait for those results to come in before we officially know if Frank Scott Jr. will be the mayor for the next 4 years. But of course, people here are riding high and hoping that is the case. They are very on board with his plan and his vision for the future. Of course, Frank Scott is running against someone who opponents are, have their own vision for the future, and that, of course, would be Steve Landers. Or Ashley Godwin is live out there at the Steve Landers party. Ashley, what's it look like out there?
Hey Ian, people are having a great time. People are chatting, they're eating, they're having drinks. It is a good atmosphere here. Again, those early votes have just come in. Frank Scott Jr. 50%, Steve Landers with 38%. No one seems to be fazed here because we are still so early in the process. But let's talk about what happens next. After all the votes are counted, a candidate must have at least 40% of the votes to not have a runoff. But if that doesn't happen, the runoff will be December 6th. So again, there's still a long way to go. We only have the early votes counted. So we will keep you updated throughout the night. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Ashley, thank you. Frank Scott's birthday, by the way, is 1 week from Friday. So he would love this as an early birthday gift.
He would love this.
Right now he's got a lead. Tell us again, they've got to get 40, the winner has to get 40% to avoid a runoff.
That's right. Yeah, if both candidates fall if candidates fall below 40%, the two top vote getters go then to the runoff.
Okay, what do you think? Chances of
I think this is one that could possibly go to a runoff. We could see. But I think this is one of the ones that I'd mark to be pretty close. And although the early numbers are fairly decisive so far for Frank Scott Jr., there's still a lot of vote to come out of. This is going to be a fascinating one to see how it turns out. When you think about all the things that have happened in the last few months with the mayor's office, sort of the self-inflicted problems that the mayor's office has had, for him to survive that would be something I think remarkable. So.
All right, and we definitely want to toss it over to Rolly and Charles just to give them the chance to tell us their perspective. Guys, what are you thinking?
Well, there's some insight to be gained from the numbers, but I think just right off the top, Frank Scott Jr. has a tremendous amount of loyalty, I think, that he's built up in the 4 years he's been in that office.
Absolutely. He's been a 24/7 mayor for everyone, and I think that's the first thing that should be noted. But more importantly, when you can only come up with an issue of freedom of information, that's not what people are concerned about. The national polls say that people are concerned about inflation, they're concerned about the money in their household, and the mayor did a great job, I think, of saying, hey, I brought jobs to Little Rock when nobody else in the South did other than Huntsville. He pressed that issue, and I think that's what's most important.
But the other big issue, I think, certainly facing an inner city mayor is crime. And that has to have been a drag on his campaign. But I think it speaks to his loyalty, the numbers that Ashley brought, and we're looking at them as well. He's got 50% of the early vote. To stay out of runoff territory, all of today's voting in Little Rock would have to go, rough math, just about 4-1 in Lander's favor, or some sort of upswell of support for Henderson to sort of erode the support for Frank Scott. So you were saying
it's going well for him. We could probably call it if we had the authority to do that. I know that his campaign would really cheer right now if we did that, but we're going to wait a little while. However, there is another race that's not in Little Rock but down in Newport, where they have a new mayor elected in Newport, African American. Derek Ratliff has beat the 20-year incumbent.
Up in northeast Arkansas. So there are pockets of different races where there is some Democratic strength. On a night where 2 minutes into the polls being closed, we got the biggest red marker placed over Arkansas, guys.
All right, so we're following a lot of races tonight, but we certainly want to follow Senator John Boozman, who was just announced as the winner there. Mm-hmm. If you remember, he was the incumbent there. So let's take a quick look at some of those numbers. John Boozman, 58%. Natalie James, the Democrat there, 38%. Kenneth Cates, 2% of the vote. So, Lance, how are we feeling about this U.S. Senate race here?
You know, that's kind of on trend with the kind of numbers that John Boozman has pulled in the past in terms of those percentages. It's a little higher than what it's been. Well, actually, no. It's, in 2016, he pulled 59.8% of the vote. This was at the end of the night when everything was counted, of course. There's still a lot of vote out, of course, but this is about probably what is expected for Senator Boozman tonight. And it's going to be a big, if John Boozman does win this race as probably expected, or as the numbers tend to suggest so far, he will be in line to chair the powerful. And they have called it. That's right.
We got a check mark there.
I'm having trouble keeping up with all the calls that are coming so fast tonight that I did not expect to be called so quickly. But Boozman is in line to chair that Senate Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee, which is among the most powerful of committees in D.C. And very important to a state like Arkansas, an agricultural state like Arkansas. And did you know that, of course, Boozman defeated Senator Blanche Lincoln, the Democrat, in 2010.
With the help of Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
That's right. When she was chairman of the Senate Ag Committee at the time.
And there was a lot of pushback.
That's right.
And anger over the fact that Arkansas lost some clout, which we now have back.
But now we will presumably have that back.
By the way, Natalie James, a published author. She's a poet and a consultancy. So Arkansas had a really viable candidate there, but early results produce a winner.
I mean, I'm not sure if I'm surprised, because a fun fact about Boozman, he played football for the University of Arkansas.
That's right.
So Razorback right there. So not sure if
that
never
played
a part.
Never hurts.
But I mean, we're talking about somebody with a long political kind of timeline here. So not surprised too much there.
Absolutely.
This guy that's getting paid six figures, as our producer says, and we're now going to get to look at the
Lieutenant Governor.
He had no idea he's making six figures, did you, Kevin? Okay. And Leslie Rutledge, she has not been declared the winner.
Okay.
But she's got a hefty lead over Kelly Ross Kraut, who, by the way, has 7 sons. They're in the toilet seat down in that house.
She's been involved in the state foster. That's right. She's been involved with the foster system here in Arkansas and has adopted children, and so is a big advocate for that. Leslie Rutledge, of course, had designs on the governor's office first. That didn't work out when faced with the juggernaut that was Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and so switched to lieutenant governor. She is, of course, the attorney general, term limited out of that. And so moved on. And remember, in the primary, she defeated a giant field of GOP challengers, beat them outright. That was one we thought could have been a runoff that night, just because of the breadth of that field. There were so many candidates there, but she whipped them all with 54% of the vote. And so she appears to be on the way to a victory tonight. And now looking, of course, at Attorney General, Leslie Rutledge vacating that office because of term limits. Tim Griffin, the former the current lieutenant governor, looking to become Attorney General with a commanding lead over challenger Jesse Gibson and an independent candidate.
Well, looks like Tim Griffin and Leslie Rutledge are looking to do a little switcheroo there. I mean,
right. Yep.
both running for each other's jobs there.
Yeah. Tim Griffin, of course, was one who was also had designs on the governor's office as well. But early that year, just looked at the amount of fundraising and the amount of energy behind Sarah Huckabee Sanders and got out of that race before Leslie Rutledge did. She hung on for a long time, probably a lot longer than maybe she should have, but eventually got out as well. And
saw the handwriting on the bank wall.
That's
meaning
right.
money.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Now, I want to go back to Leslie Rutledge really quickly because she's been very outspoken on the Second Amendment. She's also been very outspoken on Arkansas's Heartbeat Protection and Unborn Child Protection Act. So do we kind of see that playing into the conservative voter in Arkansas being a red state? She's been very outspoken. Right. What do we expect her to do?
I mean, she ticks all those boxes, right? That you have to be as a Republican candidate in Arkansas. A gun-toting, what's the phrase that she uses? I mean, very much, Second Amendment, pro-life. All of those things, and really, and that was sort of the problem anyway in running for governor against Sarah Huckabee Sanders, because they're very much in the same lane in terms of all those issues, and to the degree that Leslie Rutledge, very much a huge Trump supporter, really did a lot to ingratiate herself with the Trump administration, and both of them just could not be in the same race against each other. One of them had to get out, obviously, and so. That's how that kind of played out.
Hey, Rolly. Hey, Charles. Y'all weigh in on this. Don't let us do all the talking.
It is interesting what you say there, Lance, about the two of them being in the same lane. Now they're going to share a suite when it comes to the executive office of this state now. In terms of voters' decisions tonight to put staunch conservatives in that position, what does that say about how they might govern? In your eyes, and what does it say about the folks who are coming up in the minority at this point?
Well, right now, I think I could be fair in saying that these people are going wild with this conservative ideology. And everything is cyclic. I believe that there is an undercurrent that if those who are not winning tonight are smart, they wouldn't sleep tonight. And they would look at the fact that with all of the thrust of the red wave and everything that's happening in the state, still, there's not a significant increase in the amount of votes that a lot of these statewide candidates are getting. So there has been a decrease. There just hadn't been enough of an increase because remember I said earlier, the voter turnout in Arkansas is among the lowest in the state. And in Arkansas, the lowest turnout is among African Americans and those who are typically more of a blue voter. So the work has to be done there. I think the candidates have to be strong like Chris Jones is, and we have to also watch and see just how, now that they won, how they begin to govern.
It seems like patterns are set in stone right now in Arkansas. The one place that is growing is Northwest Arkansas. Yeah. And there's opportunities there, I think, the Democratic Party eyeing those up there with certainly with the influx of Hispanic and Latino voters up there.
Well, let me give an interesting set when I look at it. You've got in Northwest Arkansas towns like Fort Smith being led by an African American mayor, now Newport, Little Rock, West Memphis. These are population spots that if they do the right thing and grow out, this red wave that we have may not last very long.
Be interesting to see. We're keeping an eye on all of these different state races because honestly these are pockets at this point, and spots of blue within a very red sea right now, but you see potential there.
I do, and I want to say this. I think that there has to be, even though a supermajority will remain, some reaching across the line because anyone that's elected has to govern for everyone, as we know, and when that happens, we'll see just how it pans out.
It's interesting too that it seems like all of these different candidates in these conservative lanes have aspirations beyond this state or feel like something is coming due to them soon. Yes. People like Tim Griffin who've been gone from Congress to lieutenant governor and now on his way to attorney general. They all have aspirations. The chairs in this musical chairs game are going to be pulled away.
One of the things I like about voters and voter intelligence, and that is that they're very careful. When people begin to think that they own a spot, the voters will quickly tell them, no, we're the voters. We put you in, we take you out.
Gentlemen, and Faith?
You got an amen, Charles.
That's good. That's good stuff.
That's why we have this show. to show you what you've done.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about candidates, but there are also some issues that we want to look at. A lot of them hot button issues, specifically issue 4. So let's take a look at those numbers. 57% it's sitting at for no, and about 42% yes. So I know a lot of people had their eye on issue 4 on whether we could legalize cannabis. Lance, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, there's a lot of things that this issue, that this would do, but there's a lot of things that it wouldn't do. And among those things that it would not do is expunge past marijuana offenses or offer, any sort of help for people who have been convicted of these small marijuana offenses in the past. And that's been a thing that pro-recreational marijuana people have really been unhappy with about this law. They want an amendment that would legalize recreational marijuana, but also provide some aid or some help to people. Now we're out here smoking marijuana, but the people who got arrested last week for it, they're still paying a price for their crime, which is no longer a crime. And so that's been a criticism of this issue, and probably one of the, if they go back and look at it, that could be something that maybe they might have wished that they could get in there. But also they're trying to thread the needle a little bit too. Arkansas is a conservative state, and so I know when you're writing these things, you got to be very careful about what you put in and what you don't put in. This one is interesting because when it grants new licenses for dispensaries and cultivators on a recreational level, it will do that by lottery. The medical marijuana amendment did not do a lottery, and it has been a mess in terms of licensing.
Exactly.
We've seen lawsuits.
And that would have been the story that would have come out of this if this passes, which right now it doesn't. It looks like it's going up in smoke.
Still a lot of vote out there. We'll see how it works, but I see what you did there. I'm not going to let that pass.
Yeah.
But you can keep those coming all night long.
Well, a lot of issues to unpack, and we definitely want to take a look at issue 1.
I wrote these jokes.
Right there. They're there for a reason, aren't they?
Issue 1 is the legislative authority to call a special session amendment, and we want to take a look at that. 63%, it sits at no, and 36% yes. So, Lance, what are your thoughts on issue 1? Because I know it's a talker as well.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of this comes from some dissatisfaction that I think people had in the COVID era, and a lot of people will say, "Well, we're still in this COVID era," but in the heat of the pandemic, when there were so many emergency declarations and things being put into place, a lot of folks thought that the governor perhaps had too much power to do some of those things, and so I think the legislators really would have liked to have had a power like this to serve as an additional check, perhaps, on the governor. So I think that's some of the motivation behind this. A lot of states, though, have this ability for their legislatures to call themselves into special sessions. So it's not that unusual. But here in Arkansas, it's always been that the governor has to do it.
Well, a lot of people have laid claim that the reason the legislature wants to get this passed is so they can keep coming to Little Rock and get their per diems and so forth. I've got the breakdown. They get 58.5 cents per mile travel. They get $59 a day in per diem if they live within 50 miles of the Capitol, or $154 a day if they live more than 50 miles from the Capitol. So yes, there are about $3.1 million at stake in government money if this were to pass and they were given the advantage of being able to call a special session, which may not be an easy thing to do because you got to get the President Pro Tem of the Senate and the House Speaker to come in on
Someone
this.
did their homework.
That's right.
This is Craig's issue right here.
Yeah. Well, I got 2 pages of this, folks, and we've still got 2.5, hour and a half, but I won't bore you with it.
Yes.
But there is a lot to this one. So
I could see that falling either way, too. I'm not sure. I think it's one that I thought could narrowly pass tonight. We'll see as more vote comes in.
Well, we're following these issues closely. We're a few minutes away from our cut-in, so you definitely want to stay tuned. We're not going anywhere. We're following all of these races, following the issues and the candidates.
And we're waiting on Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and her camp said 45 minutes ago she'd be here in 30 minutes.
Yes.
So normally Republicans are right to the minute. It's the Democrats who run late.
And we could hear from Chris Jones in a little bit. We're told about 8:45, maybe 9. But we're going to go ahead and go prepare for our cut-in. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Don't go anywhere. You won't miss a thing. THV 11 Election Central, and welcome. It has been a night that has been somewhat surprising in how quickly some things have been called, beginning with the governor.
Yeah, we saw Sarah Huckabee Sanders was declared the winner at maybe 7:32, not even 2 minutes after polls closed. And so we want to take a look at how not a landslide, but 57% for Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Chris Jones at 37%, Ricky Dale Harrington at 5% there.
And we've been waiting. We're thinking we're going to be hearing from Sarah Huckabee Sanders in just a little bit, and we'll be doing that on our streaming channels. Let's go to the mayor's race now and show you what's happening there. Frank Scott Jr. has a commanding lead right now of about 13 points.
Yeah, and Glenn Schwartz, 38%, Greg Henderson, 8%, Steve Landers, 1% so far. So these are some of the early numbers so far. And obviously we know that we expected Frank Scott Jr. and Steve Landers to kind of be the front runners there, but we can see Glenn Schwartz with 38% of the vote so far.
Yeah, and I think that's Glenn Schwartz is down there at the bottom. I think Steve Landers is second.
See, it might be a little bit of a...
That's the only blooper we're going to have tonight. Let's talk about issue 4, but go out to Jalissa Garza, who's at the pro-marijuana, recreational marijuana camp.
Well, the energy in the room is still high. People still feeling optimistic about issue 4 potentially passing and Arkansas adding to the list of states that have passed recreational marijuana. They've been watching the polls closely like they were earlier when we last checked in with you all. But again, they are feeling optimistic. As for those against the issue, I have reached out, haven't heard back. They told me they will let me know something once it gets closer to us knowing if issue 4 is going to pass. But everyone in here also keeping that close eye on issue 2. Again, everything in here seems to be okay. Everyone's still feeling optimistic, but of course we'll keep you all updated. For now, back to you in studio.
How much do you think that'll change?
I think it could change. I expect it to be a little bit closer. It's polled closer. In the final weeks, though, it has shown some departure. The spread has widened, as you would say. The opposition has grown to it. I think as more people have gotten into that bill and kind of really figured out what that proposal really means. But yeah, there's still a lot of vote left out there.
All right, and we have just heard that Sarah Huckabee Sanders will be speaking right after this cut-in, so you definitely want to tune in. We'll have more on our THV 11 Plus app.
Thank you, Arkansas. I love you guys too. This has been an absolutely unbelievable and incredible 2 years. I first want to start by thanking my 2 opponents here in the final stretch, Chris Jones and Ricky Dale Harrington. One of the most amazing things about tonight is that no matter how it turned out, Arkansas was going to make history tonight. I know it will be the honor of a lifetime to serve as Arkansas's 47th governor and the first female governor the state of Arkansas has ever had. I'd also like to say we'll be the first, to my knowledge, father-daughter governor anywhere in the country. I like to say I think my dad's the best governor Arkansas has ever had, one of the best governors the country has ever seen, and I'm hoping to take that title away from him pretty soon. The good news is there's nobody who hopes for that more than he and my mom. For us, this was a simple decision. The reason we started this journey nearly 2 years ago is because I absolutely love Arkansas. I love everything about it. About 2 years ago, I asked my parents if I could borrow their RV for a week. I still haven't given it back. More than 10,000 miles, 75 counties, here we are. Sorry, Mom and Dad, about all the miles. It has been an absolutely amazing journey every step of the way. One of the things I love most about Arkansas, and certainly love about the campaign, is the people that you meet along the way. I've gotten the opportunity over the last 2 years to fall in love with Arkansas over and over and over and over again, and it has been tremendous. In these moments, I'm reminded of people like Chuck, who for 20 years I didn't know his name and simply referred to him as an angel in a pickup truck. Chuck saved my life and my sister-in-law's life when we flipped a car near Mountain View when we were in college. It wasn't until I was on the campaign trail that I was reunited with him and got to connect with him. Such an amazing moment. People like Lena, who's an immigrant who came to this country for a better life. She works as a fashion designer at one of Arkansas's flagship companies, Dillard's. But on every hour that Lena had off, she came into our office, she made calls, she knocked doors, and was our best volunteer and reminded us of the greatness and the goodness of the people in this state every moment. And I met a guy named Vic at a veterans home in Harrison, Camp Jack, where I got to be part of the opening for that community center. Vic is an 80-year-old veteran. And on the morning of that opening, Vic was up on a ladder, painting into the rafters to make sure it was perfect for those who have served and given us this great country. People like Vic are the very best of who we are. And I'm forever thankful for him and all of those who have served that I have had the opportunity to meet along the campaign. One of the other things I love about Arkansas, we have the most beautiful state in the country. There's a reason we're called the natural state. You haven't lived until you have seen a sunrise in flooded green timber just before the ducks come in. We had the chance to do that, float the buffalo with our entire team, and we only broke one canoe in half. We won't name names. We had the opportunity to race a cardboard boat in Greer's Ferry. We had the chance to walk in the Pink Tomato Festival in absolutely torrential downpour. I'd like to apologize once again to my campaign staff who were all wearing white t-shirts, but I'm pretty sure we're gonna win Warren. I also had the chance to take my kids on this journey, for them to see Arkansas, frankly, in the way that I did growing up. And it has been amazing to watch them see some of these things for the first time. We got to watch George, our youngest, win the Hope Watermelon Festival contest. Way to go, George. We got to watch Scarlett grow up and become the most amazing big sister to her two brothers. We are so proud of you. And just this week, our son Huck was elected mayor in his elementary school. But at the end of the day, this campaign was never about me. It was about each of you. It was about all of the people across the state of Arkansas, the people who showed up at our events, the people who made calls, the people who knocked doors, and frankly, even the people who did not vote for me. This election is about taking Arkansas to the top. I know that Arkansas can be first, and I'm committed to being the leader that takes us there. I can't tell you how thankful I am for the people in this room who got us to this moment. I'm so thankful for the most amazing campaign staff you could ever imagine, who have put in tireless hours. Listen to me complain about more than one or two things. and never once back down from the fight that we were in over the course of 2 years. Thank you to our amazing campaign staff who are all over this room tonight. I also want to thank my family, all who are back here, who have suffered through so many events, so many speeches, and my poor kids who have missed their mom and provided a content for most of those speeches. I could not ask for a better group of people to stand by my side and be part of every minute of this journey. To my parents who have supported me no matter what I was doing, my brothers, my sister-in-law, my in-laws who welcomed me into their family as if I was one of their own, to each of my kids, most importantly to my husband, who has been the rock for our family, not just over the course of these 2 years, but frankly over the course of nearly 13 years of marriage. Brian, I am so grateful for you. And thank you so much to the people of Arkansas who've entrusted this responsibility to me. I will be forever grateful to each of you, and I promise I won't let you down. I will never, ever forget who and what we are fighting for, because I have 3 little reminders, Scarlett, Huck, and George, who are gonna hold me accountable and remind me that every single decision I make as governor will have a direct impact on their life and the life of every kid in Arkansas. That is not at all something I take lightly, but it is something I know I'm ready to take on. I look forward to being Arkansas's very best governor for the next 8 years. Thank you so much. God bless you. God bless our great state. Thank you.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders live on THV11. Lance, Faith, and I are going to analyze what you just heard on our streaming channel. For the meantime, though, for those of you watching on our broadcast channel, we now return to CBS's election night coverage. Oh, keep going? I've just been told to keep going. Are we broadcast? Excuse me, y'all. Are we on broadcast? We are on air. Okay. Well, I guess we're not quite ready.
Not quite ready to go yet.
Well, let's just
analyze
this.
Obviously, a big win for Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who's had her foot in politics for quite a bit now. I mean, how are we feeling just about this win for her? I mean, she was the first female governor. I mean, the daughter of Mike Huckabee. So, how are we feeling with her win tonight?
Well, you know, it's a historic day in Arkansas that she has become the first woman governor of Arkansas, and also the first daughter or the first child of a former governor to become governor themselves. Also, the first GOP, the first back-to-back GOP winner since Reconstruction. Also, kind of a notable thing. Probably among the highest profile Trump administration people to hold high office in the United States as well, and also planning to be there for 8 years apparently.
Did you notice there was no mention of Trump? There was no mention of President Biden in any of that speech. She almost sounded like she was with Parks and Tourism as opposed to the new governor of Arkansas.
That's
Chris
right.
Jones is expected to speak soon. Shall we go to Rowley and Charles and get their take on what they just heard from our new governor? Shall we do that? Yeah, there you are.
Happy to oblige, Craig. Here with Charles King once again from Philander Smith College. And I echo what Craig was saying here. It sounded like a Chamber of Commerce type speech, a marked difference from the way she won the primary that included a lot of red meat. Signs that perhaps there might be a drift toward the middle, perhaps.
Well, I think that's about what's going to happen. You celebrate tonight, but for a new governor who has not worked with our legislature, I think the work begins tonight, not tomorrow morning, but tonight. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks what she comes out and says as our now governor-elect Sarah Huckabee, and how she begins to build the coalitions not only within her party, but across her party.
She commanding performance in several different parts of the state. The name recognition giant, echoing what Lance was saying about being one of the highest ranking Trump officials or employees, basically, who ascends to this position. It'll be interesting to see what kind of path that lays out for other national figures. And again, there could be some compass taking, or depending on how the direction she goes, that could influence the way other people approach their governing style.
I think it was kind of cute that she said 8 years.
Yes, that was true.
4 years.
Craig said, you mentioned how she could have been working for Parks and Tourism. She also could have been working for RDOT. I think I counted three different transportation modes getting flipped over in that speech. So perhaps we should alert the folks over at RDOT.
No train ride.
Yeah.
Or camper sales, I don't know, one of those two. She was feeling bad about borrowing her mom and daddy's camper.
Yeah, well, she also mentioned people who didn't vote for her as well, and she touched on that. So do we expect her to possibly take a bipartisan approach here, or could we expect the same from Sarah Huckabee Sanders?
That will be interesting to see, because really when you look at her campaign, it was really a primary style campaign right on through the general election. I mean, she did not do much to try to broaden her constituency in terms of reaching out to independents or even Democrats. I mean, she played it pretty straight to the Republican base the entire time. So how she will govern will be interesting from that standpoint. Well, you know, in what ways will she reach out to other constituencies? I think that's an open question. But really, when you're looking at the legislature, you're dealing with a Republican supermajorities there. But you're also looking at a legislature that sort of has its own ideas about things it wants to do, and they're not always in lockstep, as we've seen in recent years too. So her leadership will be challenged in a lot of interesting ways, and it's one thing to sort of watch this stuff happening from the outside. It's an entirely different proposal to be the one in the office making the calls, thinking through the strategy and deciding, you know, how to trade horses, how to do all the things you got to do to work with that legislature and make things happen.
I thought it was interesting that she invoked family in a very touching way, saying that she is responsible for what she does to her 3 children, and she thanked, and it was very heartfelt, I thought, her husband.
Right.
And we're not the only ones who were watching this speech. You know, Chris Jones was watching this speech. I can't wait to hear what he says in response to what he just saw, because the temperature, ladies and gentlemen, came down tonight. It has come down. And one of the persons responsible for that is Chris Jones, who's one of his big attempts was to bring the temperature down, and we're going to hear from him in about 15 minutes. And I get the feeling that even if we are on CBS, here I go making a call again.
All right.
Suddenly I'm the general manager of THB 11, but I get the feeling if we are still live on CBS, you're going to hear from him tonight, and it's going to be interesting to hear what he has to say.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. And Craig, you bring up an interesting point. I mean, this is someone that we're talking about is the only mom and 3rd woman to hold press secretary. She talked a lot about family. She talked a lot about her kids, and we know that women make up a large majority when it comes to voters. So do we think she was successful when it came to appealing to female voters?
I would think so. I mean, that's a big, obviously that's an important part of any electorate, really, and she's uniquely positioned, I think, to reach a lot of those folks. She's got 3 kids. She knows what those struggles are like. She's familiar with that journey, and children and education, K through 12 education, has been something that she has really zeroed in on in terms of some of the ideas that she has for her administration, and so that plays into things really well. And so all of that will be fascinating to watch over the next at least 4 years. You know, let's take it one term at a time. I appreciate the confidence,
the commitment,
and the commitment, but let's take it one term at a time. But
everybody watching this, we're going to hold her to 8 years.
Yeah.
If she comes up in 4 years and she's running for a national office, you remember tonight.
Well,
she said 8 years.
And I think that may have been sort of a little tweak to folks who are really thinking that, you know, that
she's just doing this.
She's just passing through. But I think she has signaled that no, she's committed and wants to be here for as long as she can be here.
And actually just beat cancer, I believe. So
had a bout with thyroid cancer and actually had to lay off the trail for a little while, the campaign trail for a minute. And so, she's, I've heard stories of her on the campaign trail and some of her interactions with people. I think people really like her. She connects in a real way to folks.
So did her father.
Exactly.
Man.
Her father had that as well.
He was a pastor, so he knew how to meet people at the door.
Yeah, and so she'll, and that'll be interesting too. She'll be in the shadow of her father for a little bit. That's already a point of reference as to how Mike Huckabee governed versus how perhaps she will govern. We don't know yet, obviously, but there's going to be those comparisons for a while. But eventually, she's going to stake her own claim and kind of do her own thing, and will be judged on those merits. So.
Well, you talk a little bit about staking her claim. I mean, we have seen Little Rock with, I think, the 73rd homicide that we've seen, and she's been very outspoken when it comes to crime in Little Rock. I think she referenced in a former tweet that she referred to Little Rock as a state of lawlessness. So she's been very outspoken when it comes to cracking down on crime, being a supporter of police. Is that something that we can expect will continue as she steps into governor?
I don't think that'll change, in terms of, what she can do about crime in Little Rock. I think her powers are a little limited in that regard, just in terms of the day-to-day governing of the city, obviously. But that's been a campaign theme for Republicans, really, this whole cycle, is they've really seized upon crime and inflation. And people are concerned about those issues. And so that's something that is, it's not terribly surprising to hear her talk about.
Her new home is in an area of Little Rock that has been known to have a high crime rate. So that's the governor's mansion. That's where she'll be moving in. I would assume that's the very 1st of January. Is that when she'll move in, or I can't remember.
She may be spending the night there tonight. We don't know.
I think I have a moving company with a vested interest. Wonder when she'll be moving. I can rent her some trailers.
I think inauguration is the middle of January. I don't know that. Charles knows the date. I know he probably does.
And Charles and Broly, this is going to be so interesting to see how she handles what John Brummett of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, and I know you don't want me mentioning another credit.
No.
But John Brummett calls them the backbench flamethrowers in the legislature. It's going to be interesting to see how she moves into this role, guys,
She's been a manager, but certainly a big difference, and she can give a tip of the hat to her predecessor in Asa Hutchinson for bringing the size of Arkansas's government down somewhat, but it's still a sprawling operation, even compared with the campaigns that she's managed in the past.
Even in business, when you're a manager, it's about coalition building, team building, and I think that's going to be one of her first necessities, if not one of her first priorities. It probably should be, because she's got to build them on both sides. In my best George Bush impersonation, I think the quote goes, "The whole ship rises with the tide." So you can't just take that 55% that you get tonight and leave the other 45. You've got to do both. And I think that she has the potential to do it. Just how quick she gets at that, we'll have to see.
She's one of the main issues she's going to face right away will be whether or not she signs on with the plans that Governor Hutchinson has made to expand jail space. It's something she indicated in her crime plan that she would go along with the plans to build a 1,000 new bed facility in North Arkansas. There's tremendous overcrowding in different jails around the state. That looks like something that will immediately strike up a chord with the different local legislators in the assembly at this point.
Not just with the legislators, but as you said earlier, crime in Little Rock is, in some people's opinion, out of control. So I think that there has to be some work, some collaboration between her and the mayor, who apparently will probably return to office. There's got to be some olive branches extended so that the state and the capital city can be on the same accord.
And she'll get through these first ones before you turn to the bigger, more maybe pie in the sky ones of trying to doing things like getting rid of the state income tax, which has been
that income.
Which will be the obvious question that she'll have to be faced, and it'll be interesting to see how many doubters there are in the legislature when it comes time to bring proposals like that.
There are many issues just after the tax issue, you've got the issue of educators. We've got a strong teachers union who's going to want some answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the other big issue that'll be waiting for lawmakers. They will start in the middle of January. She will start January 1st. And again, we'll see if she has a camper that she has to park outside of her mansion. Guys.
Well, remember her parents stayed in a triple wide.
That's right.
So,
Okay,
you know.
there we go.
All right, well, we'll be following all of these races closely as the numbers come in. We will keep you updated. And now we want to go to Sarah Huckabee, who has been following Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about what the atmosphere is like over there now?
Loud here. I actually almost didn't hear you just now. The music is blasting. People are getting photos, running around. It's a very exciting atmosphere. You know, it was a long campaign, but a very quick end tonight when the race was called in just the first few minutes. If you're just joining us, in her speech accepting victory to be elected to the governor position, she recognized that she would be the first woman, the first mom to be elected to this position. And that was a big focus for her, was family. And that's a big reason, even in her campaign ads, that voters told me that they were voting for her. They wanted those family issues represented, and that's something it seemed like she really struck a chord with. She, of course, noted her own family, her father, Mike Huckabee, and his past relationship with the office, and as well as kind of how she plans to look into it. She joked that up until now he was the best governor of Arkansas, but she plans to take that title. And that's really what her speech focused on, was her family, everyone who voted for her, and of course, thanking her opponents. We'll get to all of that a little later. But for now, we'll keep you posted as to what goes on here at this party as things start to wind down. Reporting in Little Rock, Sarah Huckabee, THV 11 News. Back to you guys in the studio.
You know, one of the things that President Clinton pointed out in one of his, in his big, thick biography was that a governor works more closely to the people that he governs than, say, a president or a U.S. senator. Mm-hmm. You see them every day. You're with them. You go to the store with them. You go to the movies. Mm-hmm. And I think that came out in Sarah Huckabee Sanders' speech.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very, just campaign trail experiences, all the people that she's met, some of the surprises that she met along the way, and that's got to be a singular experience to kind of get to do that, to get to go around in the state, to meet all these folks, and she probably learned a lot along the way as well when you're meeting people and hearing about their real concerns and seeing all different parts of the state, and like she said, rediscovering things that she had sort of had maybe forgotten about, even living here so long. So you're definitely in touch with the people that you govern, particularly in a small state like Arkansas. Just 3 million of us or so, and we all know each other practically, and so. That'll be an interesting experience for us.
I'm glad they called it early. It gave us a chance to analyze all this.
Not
this
even
has been
like
terrific.
2 minutes after 7:30.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of these numbers still kind of pouring in, and we will obviously keep you guys updated. We're about a minute or so away from our next cut-in, so we don't want you guys to go anywhere, but we will be keeping you guys updated with these numbers as they come in.
One of our big selling points right now is waiting to hear from Chris Jones to get his take on what he heard and how he interprets what he heard from Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and a summary of what he experienced on the campaign trail, and just his take on what we have all seen tonight. That is still yet to come. But for right now, I understand we're going to go to CBS for the national coverage. You all know more about that national coverage than we do because we've still been in here talking. So could you call me right now? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. We're not going anywhere. In fact, what you're about to see is a part of the coverage we're doing now. So we'll do a cut in here, and then as we show you some results of issue 1, and don't go anywhere.
right, thank you so much for joining us here at THV 11, your election central. We've been following a lot of the numbers so far tonight. Sarah Huckabee Sanders declared now the governor of Arkansas, so a lot of big news there. But we certainly want to follow the mayor's race as well. We want to head over to Ian Russell, who has been following his race all night, as well as Ashley Godwin. Ian, what can you tell us?
Hey everybody, well I can tell you the energy in this room is palpable. There are a lot more people in here than when doors open at 7 o'clock, and behind me it's died down just a little bit, but it was pretty much a dance floor for a little bit. His supporters out here, Frank Scott Jr., were excited. You know, they are not nervous at all for what may happen tonight. They are ready for Frank Scott Jr. to be their mayor for the next 4 years. And of course, some of those early voting numbers, and as those numbers continue to roll in, it does look like Frank Scott Jr. does have a lead over Steve Landers. So his supporters, again, are very excited. They are ready for the growth and for the vision that Frank Scott Jr. says that he has. We talked this morning and he told me he touted the growth the city has had over the pandemic. He told me he was very excited about things that they have in the works. But of course, there are some issues that his opponents have said, maybe some shortfalls with his mayoral term so far. Of course, Frank Scott Jr. looking to be the next mayor, but those on the other side are looking for a change, and that's where you find THV 11's Ashley Godwin. Ashley, Steve Landers' campaign, what's it looking like over there?
Hey Ian, everyone is having fun. They're eating, they're drinking. Steve Landers is going around talking to people. Again, these votes that we have seen so far are just early votes, so we are still just starting this process. Again, Frank Scott Jr. has 50%, Steve Landers has 38%. Greg Henderson has 7%. Again, those are the early votes. So we still don't even have precincts from Election Day come in yet. So we're still waiting for that. Otherwise, everyone's having a great time and just riding out this wave. So we'll take it back to you in the studio and keep you updated.
Thank you, Ashley, Mayor Scott, and Steve Landers, who are in this tight race, along with Greg Henderson and Glenn Schwartz. And Faith saw me walk up to the monitor. I was looking to see if I saw any city directors in the Steve Landers party, because over the last few weeks they have been against Mayor Scott.
Well, we'll certainly keep our eye on that, as well as issue 4. Here are where some of the votes stand right now. 58% no, 41% yes. A lot of issues that we're taking a look at, and that's issue 4, to legalize cannabis. And now we do have some numbers in the governor race. As we know, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is going to be the next governor, the first female governor for the state of Arkansas. Those numbers: 60% for Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Chris Jones 37%, Ricky Dale Harrington 1% there.
Been looking at those numbers to see and determine if Sarah Huckabee Sanders has had a landslide election. Right now, you'd say she was. Next, text vote for election results 501-376-1111. We go back to CBS. We continue our coverage on our streaming channels. Don't go away. All right, tell me, was it tacky of me to go look and see if Cappy Peck and
you're peering into
yes,
the thing there
some
to
of
see
the other city board members who tend to be, as how we say, more liberal, have really gotten into the Landers camp? You have to feel over the last few weeks with this freedom of information thing that's going on with the mayor and the lit fest that fell through. There's been talk that the mayor has not been as forthcoming as those city directors would like, and that's why I was walking over to see if they might even be in the Landers camp. Didn't see anybody though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a read on who maybe has defected yet.
I may be creating something that ain't there.
But I think certainly there are problems on the city board right now in the mayor's office, and those relationships are a little fractured at the moment because of those issues that you've talked about. And it'll be interesting to see, should the mayor win re-election, how that happens moving forward. What does it mean for Frank Scott, having endured all of this, to win a re-election, and what does that mean for his interactions with the board, if at all?
And we're just moments away from hearing from Chris Jones. And Lance, I want to ask you, I mean, we're talking about someone who is a highly qualified candidate. I mean, someone who went to Morehouse on a NASA scholarship, physics and math, and
MIT,
studied at MIT.
the whole thing, yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a nuclear engineer.
Right.
Could this have been a different scenario and outcome if this weren't Sarah Huckabee Sanders that we're talking about?
I think even still, a Democrat running for governor in Arkansas, which is so deeply red and so Republican dominated, it's an uphill battle. And we've seen that through the last several cycles that Democratic candidates are doing well to pull 41% of the vote. I mean, they're doing really well to pull 41% of the vote. And so it's a red state. That's the constituency. And I think, a candidate as good as Chris Jones and as positive and upbeat and as qualified as you say. Of course, we have to note that Chris Jones has not held office either. I mean, he's only been in the private sector. But in terms of other qualifications, very impressive. But you're in Arkansas at the end of the day, which is a pretty red, pretty Republican state.
And he had one of my favorite things I've ever heard in a campaign. Talked about PB&J.
Right.
PB&J, preschool, broadband, and jobs.
It was a very well-run campaign.
And I thought that was clever.
Mm-hmm. It was a very well-run campaign. The tone of it was really nice. You remember that viral video, his campaign announcement video that came out at the very beginning of the campaign that sort of went viral and got a lot of attention. Very clever ad. A nicely run campaign. He has nothing to be ashamed of tonight at all.
Well, I'm tired of stalling. I want to hear from him now.
I do as well. But, we're talking about broadband, bringing high-wage jobs, preschool. It seems like he hit the nail on the head. But what does it seem like Sarah Huckabee Sanders did right in terms of her campaigning and some of those issues that she, wanted to focus on? Where do we see that she kind of came through with the voters?
Well, in terms of issues, it's been a little opaque in terms of great detail in terms of we've gotten some broad ideas of where she wants to go. Improving K through 12 education is one of them. Cutting taxes still, even more than have already been cut already. When we get down to the detail of how those are supposed to work, that's where we sort of lose a little bit. But she didn't need to provide it because she's in Arkansas. A red state is beloved by Trump. Arkansas is popular, Trump is popular in Arkansas. And so by all of those measures, she sort of came in with an advantage.
Come on, Chris. Yeah. We want to hear from you.
I know. A lot of people are excited about him. A lot of people, really supported his campaign. And as you said, this is a red state, very conservative. We're talking about the son of two preachers. He's also a minister. So he certainly spoke to voters. But it seems like, Sarah Huckabee Sanders just came out with the win tonight.
There may be other places for him in the party, though. That'll be the thing to watch in terms of what the final vote count is, kind of what the vote that he's able to attract. The second district isn't what it used to be. The redistricting has changed it, and we can talk a lot about that as well. But the second district has kind of been the district in Arkansas where a Democrat could win, and perhaps still could win. And perhaps he could be someone who could make that happen. There are other places in the party maybe he could fit as well, should he wish to stay in politics. But I know that he's someone that the party would probably love to continue to have active in the Democratic Party here in Arkansas.
Well, if the Democrats lose the House tonight, think about it. They might see an opportunity to turn a seat in Arkansas with Chris Jones in a couple of years.
Could be,
as you know, in the House, they run every 2 years. I'd like to get Rolly and Charles's take on that. What do y'all think?
Happy to help you out there, Craig. We're talking about really prominent African-American candidates in a state that would appear to be ripe for someone from that community to emerge. And let's stack up Chris Jones and Frank Scott and anybody else who might be out there in the field. What do they need to do to convince this 65 to 70% majority that show up to vote in these elections?
Well, before we go there, I think it's important that we realize that the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about. Sarah Huckabee did not mention Donald Trump tonight, but let's mention Donald Trump.
Sure.
If Sarah Huckabee had not worked for Donald Trump, there would be no Sarah Huckabee on the ticket tonight. We would have a Governor Chris Jones or Leslie Rutledge or someone like that.
Sure.
So even though it's not spoken, let's just go there. And some voters vote for people like a Sarah Huckabee because of their affiliation with a person like a Donald Trump. And while this is a red state now, again, I want to continue to emphasize that the opposition has to go to work right now. 25 years ago, we were just the opposite in this state. There were 70 some odd Democratic legislators and 20 some odd Republican, 7 Republican senators and 20 some odd Democratic senators. What has happened to get a 180 degree shift? I think that's the question that every Democrat in the state should be asking themselves, and then when they find that answer, go out and start working towards it.
Not to be cynical, but you mentioned Sarah Huckabee Sanders doesn't have this job if a man who was a celebrity became president, and thus she became a celebrity by being in that orbit. I'm struck by something a smart person who worked here about 8 years ago said that when he first saw Barack Obama at a rally, when he was just a senator, there was a celebrity quality to him.
Yes.
Is there a celebrity in Arkansas that could emerge from what is right now the minority party?
Well, if I could be just plain, that's the okey doke in politics today, the celebrity piece, if you would.
And it's what's winning right now, but is there, and again, I hate to be cynical about it, but is there somebody out there whose personality could change that narrative?
Oh, absolutely. Who that person is, if it's Chris Jones doing a better job, then it's Chris Jones. But I will say this, that when you think about Bill Clinton 30 years ago, no one in this country believed that a pumpkin from Arkansas would become the president of the United States and do it twice, facing all the things that he faced during the campaign, during his term, and even to this day, but he did it twice. So things can happen that we can't see right now. One faux pas erases 1,000 attaboys.
It does, indeed. And it's interesting, you know, on the strength of Bill Clinton, you've had Mike Huckabee.
Yes.
You might have Tom Cotton, although not this cycle. You might have a Sarah Huckabee Sanders. You might have an Asa Hutchinson. All think that they could perhaps be from Arkansas and run for national
Well, maybe
office.
Tom Cotton's announcement today that he wouldn't be a national candidate is kind of parting the way for our new governor to not do her entire 8 years.
Well, like she said, she spoke in her speech a little while ago about being the next governor for 8 years. I want to pivot to the mayor's race. It was widely thought going into tonight that this was going to be right on the line of having to be a runoff. Mayor Scott's in this position because he won a runoff in a similar looking field 4 years ago with a liberal from the Hillcrest area, a more considered moderate former school leader, and himself with the chance to unify the African American community here. Do you see similar dynamics this time around?
No, I'm not surprised at all that there wasn't a runoff. Mayor Scott,
it hadn't happened yet.
Well,
There's still
but there doesn't appear to be
right.
a runoff. This election and the last one, the similarities I think start and stop that Frank started out in the last campaign as a strong candidate. So those people who want to oppose those things that he would represent naturally went out and found a candidate. And this time they did the same thing. Some of those same people did some of the same things by finding Steve Landers. If you look at the history, Steve Landers before this election had never expressed an interest in the growth and prosperity of Little Rock. It was for what he does in business, which is a good thing. Sometimes a good business person can be a good political leader, but it is what it is. He was a found candidate, and I think tonight's results show that.
It'll be, do you think Mayor Scott might be taking names after the last month or so that he's had? I hate to put it so crassly, but
well, Frank is a man of the cloth, so he knows that forgiveness is number one, okay?
Right now, numbers-wise, he is above the threshold for avoiding a runoff. He would need, all a mayoral candidate needs in the general election is to be at 40% to avoid that, and the last numbers that we saw had him at north of 50, with
51.
Landers coming at 39. we were looking at some of the turnout numbers, and there is quite a lot of vote out there in Pulaski County. It would take a significant tide turn, though, for it to go toward Steve Landers. Yes. Let's send things back over to Craig, Faith, and Lance.
All right, so as we said, the numbers are pouring in, and we just got word that French Hill has been declared the winner. That's U.S. Congress District 2. Those numbers right now, 59% of the vote for French Hill. And he was going up against Contessa Hathaway and Michael White at 4%, Contessa Hathaway 36%, French Hill 59% of the vote there. Lance, I want to bring you in. What are your thoughts on this race?
Probably pretty expected. The former banker French Hill, yet another term in Congress, at margins that are kind of trending within line with what he's done in the past. In 2020, he beat Joyce Elliott, the challenger, at 54% to 44%. And so those numbers kind of appear to be heading that way as well. A district that is a little different this cycle than it was last cycle because of redistricting. As we know, there's been some controversy and actually some litigation around that as people have challenged how that district has been redistricted in terms of bringing in more of, I guess that would be the north central Arkansas, bringing more of that into Pulaski County and actually carving away, I believe that would be southeast. The southeastern section of that district, a black population that has sort of changed the makeup of that district, and at the end of the day probably made it a lot harder for a Democrat to win that district in the future. But another victory for French Hill.
And we've been following all of these races. We want to take a look now at District 1. Rick Crawford, 72% of the vote so far, and Monty Hodges at 27% there. That's with about 9% of precincts reporting. So we definitely want to take a look at all of the districts. And District 3, Steve Womack, 56%. We have Lauren Mallett Hayes, 40% there. And so, as these numbers continue to trickle in, it looks like a lot of the Republican candidates here are doing pretty well tonight.
Certainly. The incumbency scores again, and look at Bruce Westerman down in southwest Arkansas. 67% to John White's 30%. Gregory Maxwell, 2.80%. Everybody holding on to their seats from Arkansas.
Yep, all those Republicans pretty safe this cycle.
So, well, okay. We're waiting on Chris Jones. From what I understand, he's in the room. People are wanting selfies. Here's Ben Gilmore, who is down in Crossett and at the State Senate. Matt Stone beats Gary Smith down in District 2.
Or is ahead in that race. Currently, that race has not been called, right?
Yeah, my bad. You're right. Thank you, Lance.
It's okay.
All right, well, we will take a short break. We will keep the results going on your screen. We'll be right back.
I've been showing off here in front of everybody in the studio. As you put up those legislative races, I've been able to tell everybody where their office was, and they're actually glad to see you back with us because they're tired of hearing it. So,
well, we've been following all of these races very closely, but we've been also following these issues, specifically issue 4, which is a hot button issue to legalize recreational marijuana. Our reporter, Jalissa Garza, has been following issue 4 all night. Jalissa, what can you tell us?
Well, Faith, I want to tell you something. Earlier, I know I told you that nobody was letting those numbers go down, but with 57% of Arkansans saying no to issue 4, we've seen a few people actually leave the room that were here to support issue 4 passing. Now, some people not even paying attention to the polls and still staying optimistic and hoping for the best. Other people feeling a little bit more tense. As we heard from Alex Gray yesterday and today, he believes that now is the time to legalize recreational marijuana and believes that if issues like issue 2 pass, this may never make the ballot again. So there are a little bit of nerves, half of the room feeling nervous, the other half still optimistic. They do believe this is going to be a close race, a long night, but again, it's really split here in the room, and I've reached out to those who are against issue 4. They tell me they're waiting to have comment until they see what Arkansans have decided at the polls. But if this issue were to pass, we would join 19 other states in having recreational marijuana legalized. We know this issue is also on the ballot for 4 other states in the country. So really a hot topic, not just here in Arkansas, but in other states as well. And as I mentioned, more people leaving the room that are supporting issue 4. So of course, we're going to keep you updated throughout the night and let you know what's happening. For now, I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to you in studio.
All right, Jalissa, lucky that was even on the ballot to begin with. On September the 22nd, the state Supreme Court had to rule on it, and they ruled against a lawsuit to stop that issue from hitting the ballot. So obviously it did hit the ballot, and now it's leaving the ballot, apparently being turned down.
Yep. All right. Well, we're following a lot of issues here as well, specifically issue 1, which is the legislative authority to call a special session. 62% voting no, yes 37%. That's with about 4% of precincts reporting. Issue 2, 61% of the vote no, 38% yes. 4% of precincts reporting, so still following those issues there. Moving on to issue 3, religious freedom, 51% no, 48% yes, 11% of those precincts reporting there. And then as we just heard from Jalissa, not looking too good for issue 4, Lance.
That's right. And actually, you know, if issue 2 doesn't pass, this probably gives a lot of the recreational marijuana supporters hope for the next cycle to getting their proposal for recreational marijuana on the ballot in 2024, because they wouldn't have to meet that elevated threshold to get it passed. It would remain 50+1 to get that passed.
All right, let's check in with Rolly and Charles. I know some of the opinions are starting to build up in their minds, and they'd like to express them to you now.
I'll leave the opinions to you, Mr. King. I'll just play the straight man to always, you be Jerry Lewis, I'll be Dean Martin. Okay,
all right, that'll work.
But in the way these 4 issues work together, there's something to be said about the people's voice. There's something to be said about people in the minority still feeling like there's a chance that they could get an issue that they feel strongly about before voters. And then there's just the plain old ordinary issue of whether or not recreational marijuana should be legal. First off, about the dynamics between 1 and 2, do you notice anything, a pattern emerging in terms of how those are shaping up?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head initially when you said that about people rule. Issue 1 and 2, in a lot of people's conversation leading up to the selection, was that they felt that those issues were somewhat taking their right away to rule how they want and giving too much to legislators and other people. And I think that's one of the characteristics of Arkansas voters, whether they're red, blue, libertarian, or whatever they are. They want that right to feel like they can make that final call.
And it's like everybody loves their congressman, everybody loves their legislator, but they hate the rest of the whole state legislature. Yeah. And so I think that's what you're seeing, at least the way the numbers are coming in right now. And then when we can use David Couch, the person who really drove medical marijuana into existence in this state. It's fair to call him a liberal or a progressive. And with him to come out against recreational marijuana, it's clear there was a calculation made by folks in that lane that if we were sure that issue 2 wasn't going to pass, they could keep their powder dry for a later date for a better marijuana bill.
That's a really deep topic. Medical versus recreational, it's a potential shift, but if you follow the money, then you get your answer.
So you think there'll still be a fight, you think, and a tough vote?
Oh, the fight goes on, yes. Okay. Absolutely.
All righty. Well, and then issue 3 is sort of like not to disparage it, but it's more of a cotton candy kind of vote. It's, who doesn't believe in religious freedom? But it is interesting that right now the numbers are leaning against actually saying it in this way in the state constitution.
Well, I was kind of surprised that the amendment even made it to the ballot with the name of religious freedom. Mm-hmm. That's kind of misleading if in some ways. So I'm not surprised that people are saying no.
It's the pattern we're seeing on all 3 of them. You thought, or 4 of them, I should say. It looked like there might be some splits, in the electorate out there. But right now, the trend and the tide is against all 4 of these issues, which is a little bit surprising, guys.
Yeah.
All right, Broly. Well, when it came about, when Governor Hutchinson in the spring of 2020 issued executive orders for social distancing and limited number of people in churches, that's when Jason Rapert, state senator from Conway, and Jim Gassaway in the House, Jim is from Paragould, issued or proposed this issue to reach the ballot, calling it the religious freedom issue, as a counter to what the governor said in the spring of 2020. So that's where that came about. And apparently it is, where did we last leave it?
Well, it's heading for defeat, it appears, so far, based on what we've seen so far.
Where are we going now, Faith? What's next?
Well, we're about to do a cut-in.
Oh, we are.
Yes.
Okay, one of those.
Hopefully hearing from Chris Jones in just a bit.
We've been saying that for an hour.
Yeah, we have. So hopefully we're going to hear from him soon. Obviously, Sarah Huckabee Sanders has been declared the next governor of Arkansas. Could have been a historic day, but still is. She's now the first woman to be the governor of Arkansas. So we are waiting to hear from him just to get his take on everything as well. Still following a lot of these races as the numbers continue to trickle in. So
there still may be some surprises on the horizon. We'll show you results as we go back to air for a cut-in. Thank you for watching THV11 tonight. Welcome back to Election Central. You've been watching CBS, and we know who the new governor is going to be, but what about the mayor's race, Faith?
Yeah, we're still keeping an eye on that, but someone who's been keeping their eye on it all night, Ian Russell, who's been following the mayoral race, as well as Ashley Godwin. Ian, what can you tell us as we wait for these results?
Yeah, guys, well, I can tell you, it's been about 2 hours since polls have closed here, but the energy in this room has not died down. People are still excited. They are still ready for Mayor Frank Scott Jr., if he wins, of course, to be their mayor for the next 4 years. And it looks like, actually, I believe he just walked in the building. I think he's actually kind of off to the side here as he kind of gets ready to come up here and be talking just a little bit. Of course, I haven't spoken to him yet, so I'm not entirely sure. Of course, on the other side of things would be Steve Landers. This is where you find THV11's Ashley Godwin. Ashley, what's it look like out there?
Hey Ian, you're right. The energy has not died down, and some viewers may be wondering why this is taking so long, considering it's Pulaski County. We're looking at a City of Little Rock race. Well, apparently there is still a polling site that has voters. They ran out of ballots earlier today, and they're still trying to make sure that those voters get their votes because they showed up at the polling place before 7:30. So we are waiting to make sure all of that is taken care of, and then we should be able to get those votes and see who the winner is. But we are still here at the Steve Landers campaign. Everyone is still talking, enjoying. I even had one woman say that Steve did such a great job with the campaign, she couldn't be upset either way. But we'll take it back to the studio.
All right, so we're following that race closely, but we do want to keep our eye on Glenn Schwartz as well as Greg Henderson. Obviously, Mayor Frank Scott Jr. and Steve Landers are the front runners in this race, but certainly want to highlight Greg Henderson and Glenn Schwartz as well. And we'll be following those results as they come in and as they're announced.
Lance, this is still early.
This is still early. We've still got a lot of vote to tally. We're obviously waiting on Pulaski County, and that's, of course, that's the key place for this race, obviously.
It's the only place.
So we've got a lot to learn about how that race is going to shape up. Certainly very encouraging for the incumbent mayor right now, though.
Real quickly about Frank Scott Jr.'s style in his first term. He assumed more power, I think, than you and I have ever seen a mayor have in Little Rock.
I think he's definitely expressed that he wanted to use as much power as he could in that office. That's a tricky office because a lot of the power rests with the city manager and the city board. And so the mayor has not been typically a strong mayor. And so he's really wanted to try to assert as much power as he can. And I think the jury's out as to whether that's gotten him into a little bit of trouble in some cases. But you know, we're going to see what voters decide.
Okay. Faith, we got to hear from him. We'll be hearing from Chris Jones, we swear.
All right, well, we will continue our coverage on THV 11 Plus, where we'll have the latest results as they come in.
Oh, it's so good to have you all here. I wonder if there's anybody watching that's watched us all night.
Possibly.
From the very first moment.
We would hope so.
We hope so because we called the governor's race early.
Yeah.
We did.
And we've seen some trends already develop. Nothing's really settled yet except for that governor's race and the U.S. Senate and Congress. But other than that,
Yeah.
we're still waiting.
That's
So.
right.
What I'm wondering is, you know, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, first female governor, but has very close ties to President Trump. Do we expect President Trump to make a statement or, you know, kind of say something about Sarah Huckabee Sanders? I would assume so.
I don't have a Truth Social account.
Yes.
But I suspect that he's probably working on what he's going to say,
sharp, isn't he?
composing what
Yeah.
he's going to say there. So
Well, he'll say something.
you can count on him not usually
Count on
saying
him
something.
saying something?
Yes, you
Yeah.
can count
He'll
on him
say,
saying
I
something.
don't know what it is, but it'll involve him.
That's right.
Something.
Yeah.
It will involve him.
But I mean, you have to go back to that moment and remember when she left the White House, and it's almost started. It felt like as a kind of a joke that Sarah's going to go home and she's going to run for governor.
Yeah.
But that was really, I mean, that was the thing. And from that moment on, it's
Yeah.
been something of a foregone conclusion in some respects.
Yeah, that was on the same day that Arkansas was being flooded and people were losing their lives and there were hundreds of thousands of dollars of property being lost. So the president kind of missed that part of Arkansas, but he did correctly predict what would happen politically with Arkansas. Anyway, that was well in the past, June 13th, 2019. Forget that for right now. Let's move on to tonight.
Yeah, we don't have the results for the mayoral race yet. Still waiting on those results, but we want to bring in Rolly and Charles. What are your kind of takes on this?
Well, we've been focusing a lot over on the Pulaski County races and specifically the mayoral's race right here in town, where, frankly, surprising to see that this is a chance right now to avoid a runoff. And you see the latest numbers as we have them. One thing dynamic that's at play here right now, Chris Jones just tweeted a few moments ago, there are pockets of Pulaski County that ran out of ballots today. There were still people online right up at the 7:30 mark, and Jones tweeting that there were people still trying to vote 2 hours after the polls had been closed. So it may be an indication of why we're not seeing a lot of movement in these numbers, Charles. But even still, as we've been saying, data-wise, Steve Landers is going to have to pull a lot of votes once these data dumps start coming in.
I wouldn't put a lot of credibility into polls running out of ballots. It eerily reminds me of my days as the chair of the Pulaski County Election Commission when that was in fact an issue, but it was resolved then. And even in those cases, it was never enough to make that much of a difference. I think these numbers tonight with Mayor Scott, we should give him credit where credit is due. He's likely going to be reelected without a runoff if things continue as they are. I think that an interesting dynamic that we mentioned earlier is that some of the city directors had started to part waters, if you would, and take sides, but now that they're going to have the same mayor most likely another 4 years, it'll be interesting to see how some of those city directors will perform now.
You just mentioned being an election commissioner. How, when you look back at the last 2 cycles and all of the scrutiny that comes on the humble election officials and that sort of thing, could you imagine facing what the panel faced in 2020 in this, the most democratic stronghold of the state?
Let me tell you that poll workers are the most undervalued people there are. Most of them, well, the actual pay is less than minimum wage. It's a 12 to 14 hour day while the polls open at 7 and many of them are there at 5. They don't leave until all the ballots are collected and things are done and the tag is on the wall at the voting precinct. That may be 9 or 10 at night. And the average age of a poll worker is probably 70, to be honest with you. So they're really good people.
Well, we appreciate the efforts that they do. We think back to a couple of years ago where it was around 4 in the morning before they finally sent some folks home. Hopefully not so late this time around, but still some hours to go here in Pulaski County, guys.
Charles King, you're exactly right. And a lot of those poll workers had family that were poll workers, and they just handed it down, and they kept going. Like
of the day.
Our Kansan of the day last night was Kim Harrison out of Searcy. Perfect example. Been doing it for 38 years. Her mother did it when they hand counted ballots. So.
Oh my goodness. Well, shout out to them because this day wouldn't be possible.
Backbone of the
without
election.
them. Yeah. So following these results, but also following the results for these issues. That issue 1, 2, 3, and 4. Issue 4, we know, hot button issue, legalizing recreational marijuana, but it looks like that might not happen. 57% no, 42% yes.
Right.
17% of precincts reporting. So we'll definitely be following that. I know a lot of people were hopeful with legalizing cannabis, but not too hopeful now.
Jalissa Garza may be the only one in the room.
Yeah, we have
a watch party.
Yeah.
Let's see if she's got anybody in there with her.
Yeah, so we have Jalissa Garza, who's been obviously following this, not even just tonight, but been following this for the past couple of weeks, just to try to keep some of our viewers up to date with the latest. So let's see if we can go over now to Jalissa Garza to see if she has an update for us.
Yeah, there are people in the room. Okay.
Yeah, not a lot of people in the room like they were earlier, and it's a lot quieter now. I feel like I don't have to yell so you guys in the studio can hear me. We've seen more and more people leave as the polling has showed issue 4 might not pass tonight, and it's a big concern. 57% of Arkansans saying no, and it's a big concern for groups like Responsible Growth Arkansas that worked really hard to get this on the ballot. We know that this was the only citizen-driven issue on the ballot, and they hoped that citizens would decide to legalize recreational marijuana like they did for medical marijuana in 2016. But a lot of the people who supported medical marijuana not supporting this bill, saying there was a lot of wording in it that they just couldn't support, and that if it was different, then they would be able to. And yesterday we saw that final push from both sides of the issue. And when I was at the Capitol hearing from both sides, the group against had about 40 different organizations, from farming organizations, trucking organizations, all coming together against this issue. So their push really seems to have worked. I mean, they know that this is a tight race. Again, the side who is against issue 4 tells me they're waiting until the final result to say anything. But here, it's very quiet, it's very tense, a lot of nerves, and somehow a few people tell me they are still staying hopeful. Of course, we'll keep you updated, but pretty quiet over here. I'm going to go ahead and send it back to y'all in studio.
Well, and the issue of whether or not they're going to try again with that issue all depends on
issue two. Let me also say, though, it is the only citizen-driven ballot issue on the ballot today. But that campaign, $12 million spent, largely bankrolled by cultivators in the existing medical marijuana industry. So a little context as to who is really backing that, and that's the existing industry. And I think a lot of people sort of that brought them to a little bit of a pause. And then there are other issues with that ballot issue as well that they did not like and find ready. But yes, issue two, in terms of the possibility of raising the threshold of what you need to get a ballot proposal approved from a simple majority to 60%, also appears to be on the way down with a 60% to 39% vote, with just 6% reporting. But and actually, all four of these issues appear to be going down, frankly. And I thought that they were going to trend a lot closer than what they had, because they had trended fairly closely in polling. And so a bit of a surprise. Religious freedom as well, 51-48 right now. That is proving to be the squeaker of the night. Yeah, with 20% of the vote for that may be the dark horse for the one that we may be waiting on for some time. And then again, issue one for the legislature to call itself into special session, about 62 to 38 at the moment, 6% of precincts reporting.
Yeah, we were talking like issue two was, or was it issue three? Issue three was going to go down, but no, it's tight. So tightening up. So there you go.
Well, we've been following all of these issues, and not to go back to issue four, but that is a focus for tonight.
It was kind of the marquee one of the night. It was the one that could have made, if had that passed, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in additional industry in Arkansas with recreational marijuana. As big as the medical marijuana market is in Arkansas, recreational could have been an order of magnitude larger. And so you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of new industry, and that was something that the proponents also pointed out is new jobs, new industry, a lot of new money coming in, new tax revenue. That would have been a plus for that industry to come in. But opponents would say that there are better ways to do it than the one that was on the ballot tonight.
And Faith, Lance will echo this. In 2016, we didn't give medical marijuana, that issue, a snowball's chance at the equator, and yet, remember how surprised we were?
Surprised,
the medical marijuana issue passed. So,
well, Lance, I have a question for you, and our Wake Up Central team, Karen Fuller, just did a great piece on the opioid epidemic, and I don't want to compare apples to oranges, but we're still kind of in the midst of that with a lot of numbers when we're talking about opioid deaths and overdoses. So is this maybe something that the state of Arkansas is just saying we're not ready for? I don't know if this is apples and oranges, not to be compared, but what are your thoughts?
Well, the interplay there has always been that to have medical marijuana proponents had said, would make a dent in these opioid addiction problems. That people could, rather than using opioids, they could use medical marijuana for certain illnesses and to relieve pain. But we've not seen a lot of evidence either way as to whether that's been an impact or not. But certainly Arkansas, being a conservative state, maybe saying, you know what, they may be either saying, we don't want to do this, or we don't want to do it in this way. I think there's a case to be made that with recreational marijuana kind of growing throughout the United States, that it's going to come to Arkansas eventually, but maybe now is not the time.
And it looks like we do have some new numbers for you. It looks like Womack has now been declared the winner for District 3 in U.S. Congress. Steve Womack, 61% of the vote there. Lauren Mallett Hayes, as well as the Libertarian candidate there, obviously following all of these races. But it looks like the incumbent candidates and Republican candidates are faring pretty well tonight, Lance.
Oh yeah. That was probably what most people expected. Steve Womack in Congress since 2011, former mayor of Rogers, in fact, and really has not had a significant challenge, frankly, by a Democrat in his years in Congress.
He has turned into the angry accountant up in Washington. He has been letting Congress have it over all of these spending issues, and has been letting people know that there's a problem with the debt.
Yes.
And he's been very debt conscious in the last few months up in Washington, D.C.
And we should know, too, that district has been traditionally the Republican stronghold. Back when there weren't many Republican strongholds in Arkansas, it was always the outlier. Of course, now it is part of the mainstream here in Arkansas.
All right, we're understanding that Chris Jones's campaign says they're still watching the numbers and they're not going to let him speak yet. And I translate that as saying everybody in the audience has a phone and they want a selfie. And that's what's holding up the whole speech.
Possibly, but you know, we've been following this race, and you know, Chris Jones not declared the winner tonight, but came very qualified. Obviously, hasn't held office before, but went to Morehouse, nuclear engineer. So I think a lot of people would like to hear from him. Hopefully, we hear from him soon. But certainly a historic night for Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Right, and he has tweeted recently that apparently, you know, there are people still in line waiting to cast their ballot when the polls closed officially, and so I think he wants to do right by some of those folks and let them get all the way through and make sure all that's counted before he comes out and makes a speech. That's what I'm picking up from what I'm hearing anyway, is that perhaps he wants to do that. But also there may be a little Bill Clinton in him too, wanting to shake hands and take photos and all that too.
I'm telling
and there's
you
nothing wrong with
all,
that either,
having interviewed both Republicans and Democrats now for 30 years, Democrats are always late, Republicans are always on time. Well, Republicans don't say as much as Democrats do. They also don't stay as much as Democrats do. Let's go over, before I get into any more trouble, to Rolly and Charles.
Too late. What are some of the big surprises tonight? It sticks out to me the ability to stay out of a runoff here in Little Rock, and also just the sweep that may be on the horizon for the against crowd in these 4 issues. You agree?
The biggest one to me was issue 4 itself. Like everyone else, I saw the trend of it going down from 58 to 51 to where it is tonight, 41, but I thought, oh, this is one of those pollster errors, and that it's really going to be a lot closer, but the polls were right.
It's interesting how that poll, the way it evolved over 2 months, you could see undecided voters in the other things that were polled, and it was a fairly sizable number. But where you saw people had already made up their mind was governor. People knew who Sarah Sanders were. They knew whether or not they would go with Chris Jones. And so their undecided number was smaller. And then you also saw with each successive issue 4 poll, that undecided number gets smaller and smaller, and that's when its support got smaller and smaller.
I think that one thing that everybody will be comfortable with, and that is no more commercials. The money spent on that issue every 2 minutes.
The opinions of Charles King did not represent the sales department here at THV11.
Sorry about that,
but it has been an incredible amount of spending.
Yes.
A lot of it driven by just how much money that Sarah Sanders was able to build up in a relatively short amount of time. We're talking $11 million in essentially
out-of-state
9 months.
money. I think it's important to note, out-of-state money.
Which speaks to her celebrity status and how many people are willing to spend in support of the national candidate in Donald Trump, and where this counts as a victory for that camp, and to be able to say, I spent a little cash to make that victory happen, it certainly appears to be going in the right directions. We will keep an eye out for any kind of closing numbers on these surprises tonight. Guys, what are you keeping an eye out for?
Well, I'm waiting on Chris Jones, and have been for an hour. Forget Godot, I'm waiting on Chris Jones.
Good things take time.
I got
Good things take time. But we also have our eye on a couple of other races, including Attorney General. Still waiting to see how the mayoral race fares out. So as those numbers come in, we will keep you updated. But we're not done for the night.
Right, and the issues haven't been called yet either, even though we're seeing trends. Text vote for election results, 501-376-1111. We have a 10 o'clock newscast coming up. What do you bet we have Chris Jones on then? You think?
Maybe
we'll have a complete newscast coming up on THV11. Thank you so much for watching this election coverage, and I will share with you on behalf of everybody in the studio, it has been a joy. Thank you.